Morning traders, I'm Greg McKenna. Welcome to Markets Morning. It's the 17th of October 2016. We had a good surge in stocks last night. When you've got a big move and then an inside day and then an inside day within the inside day, that just tells you the market doesn't know what's going to go on or what to do. A bit like, you drop a rock in a pond and you get the ripples and they get smaller and smaller. And it's only when you get the break of the range, either top or bottom, that you know the direction. And what we saw last night in the S&P in particular was a break of the previous day's top, and then in at least futures terms, we saw it then break that top again. And with Netflix closing after the bell, the 2.14% rally in the S&P, the almost 3% rally in the Nasdaq, 2.94%, and the 2.2% roughly rally in the Dow, certainly sets up a good day in Australia, in Asia, and even though Europe had a pretty good day, Milan was up 2.2%, the CAC was up 1.5%, the DAX up 1.4%, the FTSE lagged with a 0.4% rally. Even though we did see those rallies, it could be a good start to the day when we get to Europe. So we'll start off with the S&P. What drove that? JOLTS was over 7 million, so that's the job opening survey. People were happy to move to find another job, so that tells you about the confidence. I was a bit surprised with Friday's price action in the US, mainly because when I look at the consumer data for JP Morgan and those kind of things, it does look like a strong economy underlying. The JOLTS survey showed that. The industrial production showed that. The NAHB survey was slightly better than expected. The US dollar didn't take a bid, though, because economic data surprises are still slightly negative. And have a look at Markets Morning. There's some really interesting stuff I've got in there, particularly about the BAML survey, the Bank of America Merrill Lynch survey of 174, roughly, money managers who manage more than $511 billion. And what you've got is you've got a real dislike for the US dollar. Anyway, I'm 2 minutes in already and I haven't even said anything. US dollar didn't do much. Dollar yen obviously rallied. The commodity block caught a bid, particularly the Kiwi and the CAD. Gold backed off. It got to 12.32, then came down again. We'll kick off into that. Oil is a little bit higher now than it was earlier, but that Khashoggi thing, the tension seemed to be washing away a little bit. The Americans look like they might have given the Saudis the golden ticket, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And copper was down. Bitcoin, it too has had a rock dropped into the pond, and it's inside. If you have a look at the 4 hours, you'll get a real sense of what markets can do, and you'll also just watch it in real time, even if you don't trade it. Watch it in real time and then see how the price reacts if it breaks, the previous bar or a few bars back. And I'm talking about the 4 hours. Dailies probably work too. Anyway, let's dive straight in. We're going to look at the S&P, then we're going to do Forex, then we're going to do commodities, and then we'll do Bitcoin at the end. So what have we got here? We've got this really nice rally. Now, if I blow it up, you can see what I mean. This is futures-based CFD, remember. So we've got an inside day of this day. This is an indecisive day, a day where it sold off and then came back. So this is Tuesday, this is Monday, Friday, Thursday. So big down day, another big down day, but then we came back, still had a down day. So what have we got? We've got the break of that first range, which is a very positive sign. The break of that, which is an incredibly positive sign. Then now we've taken out the last 3 days and the high. So it looks pretty good. But it's bumped into resistance. If I may, I'm going to draw this line just to make this chart even messier. I've used it in Markets Morning this morning. And you can see, if I've got it right, I haven't got it exactly right, but it's roughly, pardon me, the way I've drawn it this morning on my other chart where I actually had it in there, it is, that's because that's there, not where it should be. Now it's too high. It's basically right on support now. Now, Netflix suggests that we are going to see a move higher. What have we got? We've got a break. We've got a rounding of the MACD. We've got a turning in the stochastic. So the balance goes. And don't forget, the monthly or the outlook based on weeklies or monthlies does not stop big rallies in on the daily bars. And whilst I wasn't expecting good times or bad times necessarily yesterday, what I said to James Dagger Nixon when I was on Your Money yesterday afternoon was, I'm not bearish unless last week's lows break. Obviously, it's an interview. You don't get time to talk about this. But inside, to me, is just indecision. Anyway, that's just how I trade those things. Obviously, I was asleep when that happened last night. If we have a look at the Dow Jones, a similar sort of setup, 1, 2, 3, then a roost. And the Nasdaq, of course, has come back very nicely. It's rounded as well, the stochastics. It had an inside day there, and then it's broken higher. So, where it is now, the 15-day moving average, 7419, that's a long way from where we are. I would expect that to be resistance. That high there, could this all wash away? It'd be amazing if it did, but earnings can do that. So we've got to wait and see about earnings. If you have a look at that on the weeklies, it's held, that's broken, it's held. That's similar for many others. The MACD suggests on a multi-week basis that we go further lower, but that does not mean that that's guaranteed. And equally, if I may, what you do see is if I'm looking for lower levels and position that way, but as the MACD starts to expand, as the fast-moving average starts to accelerate. If it doesn't go negative, then that's a sign that you are going to go higher. So just got to keep an eye on that. At the moment, the MACDs on the weeklies point to lower levels. In terms of the local market, I'm 6 minutes in. I'll get the skates on. What are we looking at now? Right. Well, we've got to move that to there. And what is it? Just there. We'll move that across to there where we kicked off. So we're looking at about 5.9. I've got 19 in the written piece, so let's give it 5.915 to 5.925 as your kind of your resistance zone. We're at 5.885. We'll see how we go today. Banks were rallied really hard yesterday and then got sold toward the close, so they didn't hold all their gains. The metals did well, basic materials, I should say. The CRB is up, total return. Commodity equities, I should say, is up, which reflects the fact that we are seeing a good bid come back in. So that's what's going on here. So, but still, a garden variety retracement would simply be 59 sort of 20, 5 points either side. If this turns, if it does hold up at these levels, it can run. So I'm neither a bull or a bear on a daily time frame, on a weekly and a monthly time frame. I would say that I am a bear though at the moment. Of course, calling a monthly intra-month is fraught with danger. Let's have a look at the DAX. I don't want to forget the DAX. Right, so the DAX has had a good rally. It's rounding as well, so it could, let's just, take this. That happens sometimes, folks. So the garden variety for that is 11.851. Now it's 11.795, so it's fallen down through 11.7, which is very important on a weekly basis. Now it's back up above 11.7. So we'll see how it closes, whether last week's was a false break. If it gets up through 11.850, 11.993's resistance. It's only really when I see it above 12,000 and I say, well, okay, well, maybe that was a funk that was out of line with reality. But you can see previous bottom here at the 38.2% retracement level. So that's an interesting one too. So in that zone between 8.5 and 12,000 is interesting. Medium term, I'm still looking for 11,000 though. Currencies, Euro. So Euro, this is the 4 hours. 4 days failure at this sort of a 1620, 1630 region. It's in a box. You could easily draw a box about that, around that. And I have on the written piece. So 1620, 1520, roughly, is your box. Break either side gets a run. That's how I'm trading it. The ZEW survey, which I forgot to put in Markets Morning this morning, was pretty poor. They're blaming everybody except themselves, the Germans, at the moment. But that was a pretty poor result. So my sense is we head back down towards 15.20. The US dollar's not overly strong, but as I showed in the charts, in the written piece yesterday, US dollar tightness does remain. But the key thing about the BAML survey is the US dollar is overvalued. EM is cheap. They've cut their US equity position. They're bearish on growth. It's up to US data to kick off. This is the key. If we start to see strong US data again, then we're going to see a surge in the US dollar again. We're in the back half of the month. That's much more problematic, because we don't tend to get as much data in the back half of the month, but we'll have to wait and see. But for the moment, 15.20, 16.20, break either side, gets me running. My bias at the moment, based on three goes at 16.20, is that I think it falls to 15.20 or thereabouts, 20.30, and then we'll see what happens. In terms of dollar yen, of obviously the corollary of a big bounce in stocks, a big lift in risk appetite is a big bounce in dollar yen. And we saw it up about 0.5%. So you can see here, this is how I use the MACDs. So you got a false signal there. And often, the first signal, I know the turtles used to not take a move in the same direction if the previous move had been in that direction, if that makes any sense. And what I've often found is after a decent move, the first signal you get is actually the wrong one. And have a look here, you know, sell, nope. It's the second signal. So again, the second signal. This is a 4-hour charts, obviously. So what have we got now? I'm not going to bother to put any more lines on it because that would be messy, but you can see here that these fractals are 112.50, roughly 112.50 roughly. That's going to be resistance. We're at 112.30. So if you can get through 112.50, it can run. Otherwise, it would probably be more likely to come back to sort of 12.06. Of course, this is going to depend on what stocks do. Looking at sterling, interesting night for sterling. The machinations around Brexit continue, and I've put a link to a little video which helps explain the Irish border and why it's so important. As I mentioned, I think, and I've written and certainly mentioned, I'm trying to figure this out, and I think I get a sense of it. The Europeans are not going to drop the Irish in it. They do not want a hard border. Nobody does. My question is, what happens with a hard Brexit? Is a hard border inevitable? Is that the game that the British are playing because they know a hard border is inevitable if Britain crashes out? I don't know. Anyway, have a look at Markets Morning, the written piece, and have a look at that video. It's on YouTube. It's from the FT. It's just called Hard Border if you just want to go to the FT and have a look. Anyway, so sterling was higher, even though there was Brexit kerfuffle, if I could put it that way. You know, Donald Tusk says one thing, some source says another, blah, 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 all that sort of rubbish. Employment data, unemployment data, and wages data was actually pretty strong. So the UK economy is actually doing better than you would have thought. Certainly better than the doomsayers said. Certainly better than anybody except those of us who are Australian know what a collapse in a currency can do for an open economy, like the UK, like Australia. And when you think about where it was on Brexit Day, 150, you think about where it got down to, sort of low 120s, think about where it is now, 130, still a substantial discount to where it was pre-Brexit, still a substantial benefit to the UK economy, and so it provides a bit of a lift. At the moment, though, when you look at sterling, nothing too exciting except, and I haven't got my fractals on here. Fractals. Yep, they're black. Right, so what do you got? You got that level there, which is 132.57. You got this level here, which is 132.35. So between 35 and 60 is resistance. You get through there, you can have a run. While you're below there, my sense would be that we get back to sort of 130.65 or thereabouts. It's interesting, isn't it? US dollar looks weak, but I'm finding myself being kind of US dollar positive. If you look at the Aussie dollar, let's see how positive I am here. What have we got? Right, well, we've got this grinding uptrend. I can probably be done with that. And I'm looking at the 4 hours here. So we've been talking this week about 1.5, then 39, then 62. That seems to be about where it's headed. If you have a look at it, it's going there. If you can get through this extends. If you could get through 71.62, you can run to sort of 72.45, 60, something like that. That would certainly be the case, but it's got to get up and through and hold above sort of 62, 72. But you could get an 80 point range. We got the signal, you know, to go long once it broke. It had a few, you know, basically, if you have a look at it on the daily, you can see that the 70-40 region did really, you know, had a run, had a test, and then belted on. So anyway, it's got to get up through 62.72 to kick on. I'm gibbering at the moment. I don't mean to. I'm sorry. Dollar CAD. It's been one of those mornings. Sometimes you have one of those mornings. CAD actually did really well. 0.5% to the good last night. So dollar CAD is down by that same amount. 129.36 and breaking lower. Very interesting. I'm going to have a look at this one. You know, it's still in this overall downtrend range. But if you remember, I think I said on Monday, looking at the weeklies, and I certainly know that I thought, when I was doing my chart scan over the weekend, it's remarkable to me that dollar CAD is actually in a downtrend, given everything that's been going on. And certainly it's only been in a downtrend since the US dollar ran out of puff. But it is in a downtrend. So I'll talk a bit more about that one tomorrow. Kiwi is in an interesting place right here and right now. That's a bad tick, I think. I don't think it traded down into the 60s. Certainly Reuters doesn't say that it traded down into the 60s. 76 is the level that I say you've got to watch. 76 being that low from that bar to back. And just a few points. So 79 is that low, and then I've said a few points. If I look at my Reuters, I just want to confirm that for you while you're here, because I don't want to give you a bum steer. My Reuters says low 78. So that looks like a bad tick on the AxiTrader chart there. Anyway, that happens sometimes. They'll fix that during the day. But overall, that to me looks like it's going to roll back and maybe, you know, fall back into the 40s or thereabouts if I just look at it on the 4 hours. On the dailies, you can see that, you know, it's just had a nice little up rally. Why have I gone down to short-term 4-hour charts today? Because they're the ones where I can get some sense out of what's going on. So that's why I've dropped down to the 4 hours. Gold failed at 34 the previous night, or roughly. Failed at 32 and change last night. Might be time for gold to come back and have a bit of a look. Similarly, if you have a look at it on the 4 hours, you can see there, click, click, down she comes. And that to me looks, you know, this is support here, this 12.24. But if I had to bet, I'd say 12.17 probably should trade. And you might even get down to 12.09, 12.10, somewhere like that. Now, if you think about what's gone on with gold, and I'm 16 minutes in, so I better get my skates on. I've gone way over. I'm really sorry. What's gone on with gold, risk aversion, Khashoggi, all that kind of stuff, it got a bid. That's unwinding to a certain extent. It's only been 1 day, so we're not going to get too excited. Copper's still in the range. Got a break for me to get too excited. Interesting developments in copper in terms of where the inventories are. There's not a lot in China. There's heaps in America. Really very interesting and important to get our arms around, but I've run out of time for that. I'm sorry I'm at 16 and a half minutes. What do we got here? We've got WTI sitting on support. We had a draw of 2 million for the API earlier this morning. That's helped a little bit. We'll see what EIA says tonight. Overall, we had a bit of a head fake yesterday in terms of where we got to in Brent in particular, but I'm 70.50. I'm not bearish unless 70.50 breaks. And in Brent, it did kind of head fake a little bit, but excuse me, 79.20 seems reasonable, but 80.40, I think it did trade briefly below 80.40 yesterday, which is, I think, is what I've been talking about. But that to me does look like lower levels beckon, unless or until it can take out the recent high, which is 82.55. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's, you know, so it's basically a buck either way. Righto. Last but not least, Bitcoin. If you have a look at the 4 hours, as I was talking about, this is what happens when you drop a rock in a pond and then you go... So the littler, that was an interesting noise that I just made, wasn't it? Told you these are unscripted. Anyway, Bitcoin not doing much at the moment. That was a definite ramp. Something happened. That tether rubbish the other day, people buying on the back of tether, breaking the buck and falling to 93. Made no sense to me, but anyway, it's been kicked off from resistance. Right, what have we got? We've got three speeches tonight, which are going to be really important. We've got a speech from Brainard, a speech from Wiedmann, and a speech from Broadbent. Three different central banks. Governor DeBell has just been talking in Australia, saying that there's uncertainty around housing. Of course there is. We've got some real strife if housing keeps falling here in Australia. We've got UK inflation data. We've got EU inflation data. We've got US housing data. If there's been a weak spot in the US economy, it's been housing data. So there is a sense of weakness potentially there. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll try and keep it briefer. Have a great day. Bye for now.